Hey everyone, it's our 28th XCOM 2 challenge run today, and this time we're using only WotC Specialists. We'll quickly cover the rules and then jump into the run. We're playing on Commander difficulty, we're playing under Honest Man rules, which means we only reload in the events of misclicks, glitches, and other such shenanigans. And of course the big one, we're only allowed to use WotC Specialists in combat. Now, of all the WotC classes, I think the Specialists are the most similar to their vanilla counterpart of the same name. They use the Gremlin as their secondary weapon, and it can do all the things you'd expect: healing, hacking, or inflicting damage. And in addition to that, these guys can also specialize in overwatching. Now, the WotC version and the vanilla version are not exactly the same, and I will talk about the differences between them. For example, these specialists that we're using today, they can actually equip shotguns and SMGs in addition to the normal rifles. But overall, the vanilla version and this version, they do have quite a lot in common. There's not any huge differences between them. And I have to say, I'm honestly really happy about that. See, out of all the original runs that I did with the 4 base classes, the Specialists video is probably the one that I'm the least proud of. And it's not just that I was still getting used to making videos back then, but just the run itself. I made some pretty major misplays, and I think I've gotten a lot better at the game since then. And part of that is just doing a lot of these runs and getting an idea of what works in the game and what doesn't. But the other part is the information and tips that all of you guys have given me. I've learnt a lot about the game's mechanics from all the comments you've posted and the discussions that we've had, so I'm kind of looking forward to this one as a bit of a redemption run, I guess. I think I can do the Specialists more justice this time around, so let's see if I'm right. Well, it's not going to be on this mission. Cheeser takes a one-shot crit from a captain, and I decide I'm just going to restart. Now, in the past, I have played through Gatecrasher while sustaining losses, but these days, I kind of figure if a viewer has submitted a character, we should try and keep them alive through Gatecrasher. It doesn't take very long to start again, so we might as well do it, try and keep those viewer characters alive. Now, on the second attempt, a bunch of civilians are blocking our way onto the rooftop of the nearest building. And that means we cannot climb up there without blowing our concealment. So instead, we have to run all the way around the structure, and it takes ages to do this. There just wasn't another way onto the roof anywhere nearby. And the problem with it taking so long is that up-throttling kicks in. Now basically, up-throttling causes Advent units to kind of magically know your position and to start moving towards your troops once you've been in concealment too long. I think it's designed to stop people from making it all the way to the objective while still being concealed. I don't think the developers wanted stealth to be the main focus of the game, so they created this mechanic in order to force the combat to begin. Now, I really do not like this mechanic, and because of it here, in addition to me becoming impatient because it's taking us so long to get to where I want to be, well, I kind of end up running directly into the first pod. I'm just moving too far, too fast. Now, Taylor and Cheeser make some impressive shots, and they wipe out 2 of the 3 troopers. The third one, however, does survive, and it sends Taylor into bleed out. Now, no one has a medikit at this point, so we cannot stabilize him. Our only chance of saving him is if we can complete the mission fast enough before he gets sent to the Shadow Realm. And this results in me doing the exact same thing all over again. I go running headlong right into the second pod. And because of that, Coffee Man gets one shot by the captain. No bleed out for him, just annihilation. Alright, third time's a charm. This time we can get straight onto a rooftop, so that's really nice. And the reason we want to do this is because the height advantage will give us an aim bonus. It'll make our shots more likely to hit. So we wipe out the first pod with an Overwatch ambush, and everything's good. And then I want to show you this. Sometimes there's security towers on this first mission, Now, in a normal playthrough, you would have no way of being able to hack them. But given we're starting the run with a bunch of specialists, we can hack this tower. And you can see the result of failing the hack is a group of enemy reinforcements being called in. Now, interestingly, when they appear, they don't come out of a dropship like they normally would. And I'm guessing it's because the dropship animation was never programmed to be used in the Gatecrasher mission. In a legitimate run, there's no way reinforcements would ever be appearing here. So instead, the bad guys just teleport in. Now, it's 2 troopers and a captain, and they don't last very long. We've got the Overwatch set up, we were ready for them. And realistically, there was absolutely no reason for me to attempt this hack, but I just wanted to show off reinforcements on the first mission. It's something I'd never seen before trying this run, and I thought it was cool. Now, of course, we still have the usual pod of a captain and 2 troopers out there. We are going to have to deal with them. My plan is for Drifter to lead the bad guys back into an ambush where we can hopefully take them out pretty quickly. Our boy is basically serving as a living mimic beacon. Now, once we find the pod, the rooftop soldiers can use aid protocol to increase Drifter's defense while he draws the bad guys back towards the team. That's going to mean that advent shots are less likely to hit Drifter. Hopefully it's going to keep him alive. And I'll also mention here, you might notice that these guys actually start with the Haywire protocol ability. In Long War 2 itself, drones can start appearing really early on. I think they can even come in on the first mission, if I remember correctly. So there is a reason for the specialists to have this ability this early, but since we're playing the vanilla game, we're just using a Long War 2 class, this ability is going to be completely useless to us until mechs show up. Now, in the exchange with this pod, Cheezer does get hit by a trooper, but he thankfully survives on a sliver of HP. That's all we need. That's enough to keep him alive. So then on our turn, Coffee Man one-shots a trooper off a 67% shot, and then Drifter can use a grenade to remove the 3 HP that the captain has left. And as if things aren't going well enough, Cheezer lands a 69% shot to down the final trooper. So really impressive display from the squad here. Now, I've spent way too long talking about the first mission of the game, so let's move on. The first scanning reward to appear is actually an engineer. Now, getting an extra engineer this early is awesome, because after we win the second mission, we score another engineer as a reward. That's the one that you always get. I then decide to build the resistance ring before the GTS, and that's pretty unusual for me. I just didn't think we'd need the GTS right away in this run. I'm expecting these guys to be a decent class. And the really cool thing about building the ring is that it actually gives us a covert op for a 3rd engineer. That's 3 engineers before the first council mission. We are going to make so much progress with excavating the Avenger. But the rewards aren't over just yet. In addition to all our engineers, we also score the breakthrough research for +1 damage on our rifles. This means they'll do a minimum of 4 damage instead of 3, and that's the difference between one-shotting a basic trooper and not. So it actually has a really big impact this early in the game. The strategic layer is being super generous to us this run. So as we deploy on the first council mission, it's the Horde sitrep. Now, like I said, our specialists can actually equip SMGs and shotguns, and if we hadn't got that +1 damage on the rifles, the shotguns would have been more appealing to me at this stage. But seeing as the rifles are doing the same damage, I'm mostly using those for now. That being said, the shotguns do still have a really good use case, as they do get a higher aim buff when they're at
close range.
So a point-blank shot with a rifle on one of these low-level soldiers, it's probably going to be around 87%. Meanwhile, a shotgun is probably going to be in the mid-90s, if not 100%. So yeah, the shotguns are still definitely good to have. The trade-off is that at medium or long range, the shotgun's aim penalty will be worse than the rifles. So with all that being said, I decide to give Jane Kelly an SMG since it grants a movement bonus. The other soldiers I'm giving the regular rifles. I'm expecting them to be firing generally at medium to long range. And the cool thing is the SMGs actually gain the +1 damage from our rifle research. Now Kelly's job on this mission is really just to reach the VIP, and I figure being able to move more quickly, that's going to help her complete that task while also staying alive. The rest of the squad shoots at the Lost from the safety of the second-story building, and yeah, the mission ends up going really well. Everyone makes it out alive. I honestly don't have much to say about it. The best part is that afterwards we get our first promotion. Now, our skill trees are Medic, which focuses on healing abilities, as you'd probably expect. Then we've got Watchman, which is where our Overwatch abilities can be found. And finally, Hacker, which is a combination of hacking abilities, but also other gremlin skills, such as dealing damage. So for our first lot of abilities, we have Revival Protocol, which is the same as vanilla. Sentinel, which allows us to take 2 Overwatch shots instead of 1. But what the description of this ability fails to mention is that you won't take 2 Overwatch shots against the same enemy. What I mean by that is this ability will only proc if there's at least 2 bad guys to fire at, and you'll fire at each one of them once each. And finally, there's Combat Protocol, and that's also the same as vanilla. Now, heading into the Retaliation mission, I was discussing with Twitch chat about what Chosen was going to show up. And here's what Past Drifter had to say about that. As long as it's not the Assassin, then I think we're okay. If it is the Assassin, we about to be in for a bad time. So that being said, what Chosen do you think is going to spawn in? Yeah, of course, it's the Assassin. I didn't even need to ask. And her abilities are simply ungodly. Revenge and low profile. So low profile will make it difficult for our shots to hit her, and when they miss, which they're going to, revenge means that she has a chance to fire back at us. This is honestly disgusting. Now her weakness is groundling, so we want to find some high ground as quick as we can to take advantage of that. The game, however, has other ideas. There is some high ground that I'm trying to get to. There's a little lookout tower, but before we can make it there, we run into a trooper and a sectoid. We have 3 shots that we can take, and they're all around 50% each, and of course, every single one of them misses. This is the equivalent of flipping a coin 3 times. You want to get heads, but you get tails every single time instead. Just brutal. And the other issue is that Drifter and Coffee Man are tired from that previous mission. Now I still chose to bring them on this one since it was either them or having a whole team of squaddies. I figured their abilities might help us, but because these guys are tired, their will stat is lowered and Drifter gets mind controlled by the sectoid. In response to this, Coffee Man panics. So just like that, half of our team has been disabled. And honestly, it's worse than disabled. One of them is now actively working against us. We use a flashbang to break the mind control, and with Drifter back on the team, he can use Combat Protocol to finish the trooper, and it's at this point the Assassin shows up and things are looking pretty bad. Now the reason I was worried about the Assassin in particular is because our specialists are pretty slow moving compared to her. We don't have a flash attack or anything like that we can move a big distance and still attack. So Lady Dreadlocks is just going to run rings around us and we'll be powerless to fight back all that much. I am going to try though. What else can we do? We move up to flank the sectoid and that reveals another pod. This is just absurd. And understand, we've barely covered any ground on the map. Advent is just coming straight for us this time around. Now combine that with the Assassin lurking out there, and I decide this is too dangerous, we need to get out of here. So we're able to evac out, it's our first loss, but at least everyone is alive. And I don't think there's much we could have done there. We started in a bad spot with not much cover, and the enemies were too close for us to be able to break through and reposition to a better spot. Not to mention, like I said, we got the worst of the Chosen possible. Yeah, that one just wasn't working in our favour. Now soon we have a covert op where we get our first sergeant. We can learn Field Surgeon, which reduces wound recovery times for most soldiers. I think it only applies to soldiers deployed on the same mission as the person who has this ability, but I'm not 100% sure on the mechanics of how this works. Anyway, then we have Covering Fire, which is similar to Vanilla, but it also grants an aim debuff to the enemy unit, so that's not bad. And finally, there's Interference, which can cancel an enemy's Overwatch. And the good thing about this ability is that using it doesn't actually end the soldier's turn, so that's pretty good. Now, full disclosure, on the next mission I did reload. You can see here Phoenix moves forward and it looks like he has line of sight on both the Trooper and the Lancer. But it turns out he doesn't, he can actually only see the Lancer. So I move forward to a tile that looks safe in terms of concealment, but the Trooper actually has line of sight on it, so it's not safe, and we lose our concealment. So I did reload the turn here. Now, is this an honest man reload? I mean, I don't know. It was partially due to me moving too quickly and not paying close enough attention, but it was also partially due to the game just not being very clear about exactly what we could and couldn't see. So I think this one's fine. Hopefully you agree with me. And if not, that's cool too. So on the reload, we decimate Advent. And it's here with Cheeser I learned that Sentinel won't activate twice on the same unit. So that extends the field commander's lifespan by a few seconds, so he gets to live a bit longer. It just means we have to waste him on the next turn. It's no big deal. By the next supply raid, we're fielding 5 soldiers. I think we were on the previous mission too, actually. Anyway, Advent are fielding Vipers and Purifiers. Now, I had deliberately built the Boltcaster in the Proving Grounds specifically for the Vipers. The extra damage it provides could help us eliminate them more easily. Problem is, I forget to equip it on anyone before we deploy. So yeah, this was a really terrible move on my part. Now, we're still using tier 1 weapons, so our damage output kinda sucks, and this leads to Phoenix being one-shot crit by a Lancer. We just cannot eliminate the bad guys quickly enough. Now, Phoenix is only bleeding out, and we do have a medikit, so we should be able to save him. But first we need to deal with the enemies. And the really good thing about the Lancer's melee attack is that it's left him out of cover, so Ox Error blasts him pretty easily into the next dimension. That's what we like to see. What we don't like to see is that Malorian misses his second roughly 70% shot in a row, and that causes the captain to live. Or continue living, I guess. Anyway, it falls back to some reinforcements, so it's not a problem for right now. We're going to focus on saving Phoenix. Now, Coffee can stabilize him with the medikit, but then we can actually also use Revival Protocol. So we can wake Phoenix up and bring him back into the fight. We just need to be careful with him since he only has 1 HP, so if he gets hit again, it's going to be bad. We creep forward really slowly and I'm Overwatch camping as we go. Now this does mean that we miss out on a few of the loot crates, but I figure that's better than losing soldiers. But honestly, playing slow and steady, it doesn't help. We miss 4 out of 4 Overwatch shots on the pod when it does activate. So that's just great. I throw a grenade with Phoenix, but I actually mess it up. I thought it was going to hit both the captain and the trooper, but the trooper actually avoids the blast. We did destroy its cover, we didn't actually hit the trooper itself. And then Kelly wants to be just as incompetent as her commander, and she misses a 75% shot. Ox then misses a 47% shot, and that's pretty much our turn done. Meanwhile, the trooper ends Malorian with a one-shot crit. So it's Kelly's turn again, and this time she misses a 77% shot. And so finally, after 2 turns and 3 missed attacks, Coffee Man can finally land one and avenge Malorian. He takes that trooper down. Man, this thing was annoying. Of course, that means it's the enemy turn again, and the sectoid one-shot crits Ox. Now, I was super salty here, and I think rightfully so. The chance of missing all 3 shots that we missed is about 3%. And while that's happening to us, Advent gets 2 one-shot crits in a row. It's just nonsense, and it's so infuriating. But I know what you're going to say. That's XCOM, baby. And of course, you are all correct, so we just got to take this loss, continue on the best we can. And the really annoying thing is that Ox was the only soldier we had with genius intelligence, so losing him really sucks. And even though the RNG was really bad here, I do have to take my share of the blame as well. If I had remembered to equip the Boltcaster, maybe some of our lost troops would still be alive. This whole redemption idea, it's not exactly going to plan for me, is it? But before the mission is done, our boy Coffee Man makes a 31% shot to avenge Ox and finish off the sectoid as well. So even though this mission sucked, it revealed who the MVP of this run appears to be. And I'll give you a hint, it's not Kelly. But yeah, Coffee Man avenging his fallen teammates, bringing Phoenix back into the fight, this man is definitely pulling his weight. Another covert op and another promotion. We have Medical Protocol, which is the same as Vanilla, Scanning Protocol, which is also the same as Vanilla, and Trojan, which causes hacked enemies to lose health and be disabled on the turn the hack ends. The next deployment is the Council mission, where you have to hold off enemy reinforcements until the evac zone appears. Now I've mentioned this one before because it's normally a good litmus test for how a run is going. If you can beat this mission easily, it probably means things are on track. If, however, you're not progressing enough either in soldier levels or technology, this is often the mission that's going to punish you for it. And I'm pleased to say on this one it goes really well. Thanks to that supply raid we have mag weapons, so we're doing more damage, and that includes the magnetic Boltcaster, which I do thankfully remember to equip this time. And who do I give this weapon to? This guy. Yeah, after that April Fool's video I made, someone suggested I add my Saints Row character into the pool, just like I did Vinny and Bedwetter last year, so I did. And I figure, who better to trust this important and unique weapon to than this absolute specimen right here. It's in good hands, I'm sure. And the good thing about the Boltcaster is it has a chance to one-shot mechs, even through their armor, which is really nice. On top of that, even when it doesn't one-shot, it does also have a small chance to disable the target, which Abomination actually pulls off on one of his shots. Our shredding options are pretty limited, so having an effective way to deal with mechs is important, and right now the Boltcaster is really helping us out. Now we've also built the Frost Bomb, which is always good to have. It's basically a poor man's mimic beacon. It can allow us to shut down a single enemy for a turn. So yeah, all good here. Despite the setback on that previous mission, things seem to be overall on track for this campaign. On the next outing though, the Assassin returns, and my goodness, this was a tough fight. We're in one of the slum maps, so there's plenty of buildings, and there's the waterway, and it gives her really annoying hiding spots. She brings Abomination down to 2 HP, Kelly down to 1 HP, and Taylor also down to 1 HP. She doesn't actually go for a blinding grenade at all. She uses Harbor Wave once, but every other turn it's a sneak attack with the katana. And I'd honestly prefer the grenade since it at least doesn't drain our health. Now, not only is it difficult to locate her when she vanishes, but because of revenge, I'm being really careful about when I decide to shoot at her. If it's a low chance to hit, there's no point taking the shot since if we miss, she may get to send one back our way. At the same time, if we're not in full cover, I also don't want to shoot at her in case she fires back. So we need a decent chance to hit her and a relatively low chance of her hitting us. And given she's so much more mobile than we are and there's full cover all over the map, those chances don't come up too often. Now this ends up making grenades and combat protocol especially useful. We don't have to worry about those things missing. And Abomination ends up blowing the assassin sky high with a grenade. So we were able to beat her, but like I said, this was a really difficult encounter. And you know what? She's about to get even more difficult. At the next council drop, the assassin picks up explosion immunity, so grenades just became infinitely less useful against her. And this is honestly really bad. The less options we have to deal damage to her, the more likely it is we're just going to have to shoot and deal with her revenge low profile combo. She's quite the formidable adversary this run. Meanwhile, Cheeser reaches captain level. Our abilities are Field Medic, which is the same as vanilla. It gives our medikit more charges. Then there's Ever Vigilant, which is also the same as vanilla. And Airdrop, which allows a gremlin to deliver a grenade to one of our units, but it's limited to 2 uses per mission. So it's basically like 2 free grenades. Now, we have 6 soldiers by this point, and I decide we need to make some story progress, and we're going to skulljack a captain. I could have done it earlier, but I was waiting on blue screen rounds. We have them now, so we should be able to deal with codexes fairly easily. Before we can deal with the codex, though, we have Coffee up on the railway line, and it's just him and a mech in a face-off. And unfortunately, he doesn't have blue screen rounds. See, we're a little bit broke. All those engineers have led to me investing a lot of supplies into facilities. We're actually already building the training center, which is way earlier than I normally would get it. And because of this, it means that we don't have a lot of supplies and have only been able to afford 1 set of blue screen rounds. Now, I gave them to Abomination to guarantee the Boltcaster can one-shot a mech. But ironically, Abomination cannot get line of sight on the mech. The implications of this for Coffee is really bad. So he's not going to be able to do enough damage to take it out himself. So we have to try a haywire protocol. It's a 74% chance to shut down the mech, and sure enough, our MVP Coffee gets it done. This guy seems to be our secret weapon. When we need him to come through, he delivers. Meanwhile, Kelly has the Skulljack, but she can't actually reach the captain. So we use the Frost Bomb to disable it, then we move Kelly in so that next turn she will be close enough. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. The next turn, we get the Skulljack, here comes the Codex. I try to one-shot it with Abomination, but he has to reload his weapon. This means he can't reposition, so his chance to hit is only 47%. Needless to say, he misses. Sally makes up for this by obliterating the mech that was harassing Coffee, so that's 1 less enemy that we have to worry about. Now here, we could start shooting at the Codex, but I opt not to. If we shoot at it, we're not going to do enough damage to take it out, and it's going to clone. That's going to be multiple codexes to deal with. So instead, I decide I'm going to let it attack us. We have the feedback resistance order, so I gather a bunch of troops together to bait the psionic bomb. The Codex will hopefully fall for the trap and take enough feedback damage to be sent straight to the Shadow Realm. That means we're not going to have any clones that we need to deal with. So in theory, it's a good plan, but the problem is, on the way to the other soldiers, Drifter activates a pod of 3 sectoids, and this leads to a great deal of chaos. The enemy turn begins well enough, the Codex uses the psionic bomb, and sure enough, it destroys itself, all according to plan. But the sectoids end up mind-controlling Abomination, plus they raise 2 zombies. So just like that, we got 3 sectoids, 1 of our own troopers, 2 zombies, that's 6 enemies we got to deal with, and we've got 3 soldiers who need to both reposition away from the psionic bomb and reload their weapon. That means that they're not going to have any actions left to fire their guns at the sectoids. Fortunately, we do have a backup plan. See, we've got tier 2 gremlins by now, so combat protocol is doing 4 damage instead of 2. And that means, even without using guns, the troops with combat protocol can still 2-shot a sectoid. So we wipe out one of the naked boys and both the zombies. There are still some enemies left, but we've done really well with reducing their numbers here. Those zombies especially can be dangerous, it's good we got rid of them. So of course it's the enemy's turn, and Abomination is going to be able to attack us. And it's kind of funny, when this mission triggered, we were only about 3 days away from having plasma grenades, and I gotta tell ya, I've never been happier to only have frags. See, Abomination is out of rounds with the Boltcaster, so instead he opts to use a grenade. It only does 3 damage, which is about half of what a plasma grenade would do, so being behind on the research front actually helped us out in this instance. Then we clean up the sectoids and that brings Abomination back to our side. Whether that's a good thing or not is probably a matter of personal opinion, but either way, this one was a dicey encounter, but we pulled it off. The next few missions go off fairly well, but I do want to show this. Our boy Drifter has an 83% chance to shut down this mech with Haywire Protocol, and of course, it fails. We've just wasted our turn, making the enemy more powerful. Meanwhile, Taylor can just one-shot the stupid thing with his blue screen rounds. And this is one of the reasons I hate hacking in this game. Just give enough soldiers blue screen rounds and you won't need to hack. Dealing damage is almost always just better than using these gimmick attacks. So I know hacking really helped us in that previous mission, but that was such an edge case. Those moments come up so rarely. I think there's just a lot of wasted potential with hacking in this game. Anyway, we have a guerrilla op where we can only deploy 3 soldiers because of the surgical sitrep. Speaking of mechanics I hate, there's another one. And it's honestly looking pretty dire here. Cheeser finds himself as our only man still in the fight. Kelly has been cloned by a Spectre, and Coffee has been bound by a Viper. The field commander is also active, and he's getting ready to try and murk us. So it's looking like a really grim situation. Now Cheeser can land his shot on the Viper, and that's going to free Coffee, and then Coffee has the Frost Bomb, so he can actually shut down both the Kelly clone and the Viper with one attack. And we just got really lucky there with the placement of the enemies. They were close enough that we could freeze them both. The commander misses Coffee, and now it's our turn again. And something that I found weird here, Cheeser has blue screen rounds, but apparently they don't do extra damage on the Spectre clone. Now they do extra damage on the Spectre itself, and isn't the clone made of the same material? Apparently not, so that's something that I've learned this run. I thought that was interesting. Now it doesn't actually matter, our boy rolls max damage and he one-shots the clone anyway. So now we have all 3 soldiers back on our side and we can actually take the fight to the enemy. And we end up winning this one. The avatar progress has filled, so we're off to the Blacksite. Now I'd honestly rather do this once the assassin has been shadow realmed, but desperate times and all that. We need to reduce that progress, this is the only way we can do it. Now I've given Sally both the Sentinel ability and a superior stock. So if she can overwatch multiple enemies, that's a minimum of 3 damage on 2 of them that she's going to deal, not accounting for armor points of course. Drifter meanwhile has picked up Fear of the Chosen and he panics as soon as she arrives. And I don't think I've seen this one before. He charges headlong into the enemy. And by doing so, he activates a turret and another pod. Now it's not looking great, but he at least did it on the enemy's turn, which means we have a full turn to react. And the first thing we do is use Revival Protocol to remove the panic from Drifter, so now he's back in the fight. And here you'll see I consider hacking the mech, but it's the same problem as the Retaliation mission. Why risk an 82% hack when we can just use Combat Protocol and obliterate it outright? The same thing with the turret. Combat Protocol does extra damage to these robotic enemies, so that's usually a much better option. Now the Shield Bearer survives, but it thankfully misses with its shot. No Shield Bearer one-shot crits, at least not yet, so I'm very thankful for that. And I show my appreciation by giving him a merciful end. Now once he's gone, I focus on using Scanning Protocol and our Battle Scanner to locate the assassin. The plan works, we find her really quickly, then we can use a grenade to destroy her cover, then we either just start shooting at her or using Combat Protocol. And Combat Protocol, I think it does have squad sight, so we can actually use it to hit units beyond visual range. That's really helpful. Now the assassin does survive and she calls in 2 troopers, then she hits Drifter with a Harbor Wave. So we can use Revival Protocol on him again and he's back in the fight, where he promptly misses the skull mine on one of the troopers. That's our boy. He's consistent if nothing else. Now the basic strat that I take with the assassin here is that we're going to use a regular shot on her first. Then after low profile kicks in and our hit chance goes down, that's when we're going to start using troops with stocks and combat protocol for the guaranteed damage. And honestly, it works pretty well, and we take her down this turn. She actually wasn't that difficult. And as for the rest of the mission, there's really not too much to say. Being able to easily dismantle the turrets with our gremlins means that we can get on the roof of the main building quite safely and easily. And that's something that hasn't been happening too often in these runs lately. Now once we're up there, we have a great deal of control over the battlefield. We can just mop up the pods without issue, we grab the vial and we book it out. So a successful outing on this one, thank goodness for that. But almost straight after this, the base defense mission triggers. This is way earlier than I was prepared for it, but it's here all the same, so we gotta do this. We kit out our best troops and off we go. We take a couple of steps beyond the platform and we're instantly met with a berserker and 2 mutons. Then a few steps to the right and we have an Archon and another 2 mutons. And both of these pods were positioned right in front of our spawn point. There was not much we could have done to avoid them. Now 3 mutons and the Archon all survive, and the best I can do is flashbang them. Now despite the disorientation and Kelly being in full cover, both mutons decide to shoot and they both hit her. Down she goes. Permanently. Now she had death from above as a hidden ability too, so losing her is extremely annoying, especially in this kind of nonsense scenario. So on our turn, Taylor has a hair trigger that activates, and you might be thinking that's nice, right? Problem is, both of his 86% shots land a dodge. So that means with his 2 attacks, he ends up doing the same amount of damage as 1 regular attack. So the hair trigger was pretty much useless. Again, I'll reiterate, the mutons can hit 2 disoriented shots through full cover. We can't even make 1 of 2 86% shots. This game, I tell ya. We eliminate the Archon, but on the enemy turn, yet another muton shows up, and this one has a purifier with it. Now 1 muton our Sentinel Overwatchers take out, but the second, not so much, and it throws a grenade right into our lines. And yes, my troops are clustered close together here, but again, we've been swarmed before we barely got off the Avenger platform, so positioning has been pretty limited. And all of this results in Phoenix, who Bradford sent out just last turn, also getting Shadow Realmed. And the grenade has destroyed pretty much all the cover, so we're going to be even more limited with our positioning as we press forward. Now Coffee Man is the only medic we have, and I end up using both his actions to heal some of the other injured units, and this means I have to leave him out of cover. I can't reposition him. So he has nothing but an aid protocol to protect him. This could end really badly. Let's see how we go. And thankfully we actually get some good luck, and the remaining enemies are either frozen from the frost bomb or they spend their actions running towards the Avenger platform. But like clockwork, there's another pod, this one with a priest and a stun lancer, and this onslaught just seems never ending. Now with how much we're having to heal troops, having another one of our medic specialists would be really helpful, you'd think, right? But of course, that's not what Bradford gives us. Nah, he sends out a squatty instead. Words cannot express my contempt for this man Bradford. Now thankfully we're able to clear out the muton and the purifier, and that actually means no more mutons. We've finally gotten rid of all of them, at least for now. But things just keep repeating. The priest and the lancer move in on us and we get the signal for enemy reinforcements dropping in. It's just the same thing again and again. Before we can deal with the current enemies, more of them start appearing. We really are getting overwhelmed. So on the next turn, we thankfully do receive Polar Koala, one of our medics. And I made sure to equip her with a medikit before the mission. I was hoping Bradford was going to send her out as backup, which he did, eventually. Now Polar and Sally both have stocks, and they come in really useful here combined with all the uses of combat protocol we have. Our specialists may not have the ability to deal lots of damage at once, but having guaranteed damage is a decent trade-off. With our soldier numbers replenished, we're able to almost clear out the battlefield. There's one priest left with sustain. The plan is for the bulk of the team to deal with the reinforcements that keep coming. Meanwhile, Abomination and Keyring the squaddie head for the Disruptor. Now, Abomination is there since he has the Boltcaster and can do big damage on the device. Keyring, on the other hand, well, he's there in case someone needs to slow down the bad guys while Abomination makes his escape. Yeah, being a low-level soldier is tough on this mission. Now, luckily for Keyring, it doesn't come to that. He and Abomination actually get line of sight on the device without activating the pod that's guarding it. Now, this was a great stroke of luck here. With the Boltcaster's high damage, the Disruptor actually goes down with only one shot from both men. That means on the next turn, we can start running them back to the Avenger as fast as they can. Meanwhile, with the rest of the team, we're just using Overwatch ambushes to try and keep the enemy reinforcements at bay. Cheeser and Sally can both take 2 shots each, so that's a total of 4 just with those 2 alone. And while it sounds good, the problem is we haven't found too many scopes or aim PCSs yet, so most of our squad's aim is pretty bad. So while we're making lots of Overwatch shots, we're also missing lots of Overwatch shots. And that leads to something that's pretty common on these missions. We are able to get out alive, but it takes us an eternity to do so. But a win's a win. Everyone makes it back to the platform. We're even able to carry Kelly and Phoenix's bodies out, so that's good. We didn't have to leave them behind. May ye rest in peace. But I'll tell you, the most brutal part of this is that because Phoenix wasn't initially deployed on the mission, he came out as backup later on. We don't get the option to memorialize him in a poster after the deployment. I even checked the memorial, but there doesn't appear to be any way to do it from there. And normally I always make a poster of the deceased. But not this time. Sorry, Phoenix. The game really did you dirty here. So that mission was extremely brutal, and losing Kelly really sucks. And at this point, I'm just crossing my fingers for another soldier with death from above at some point. That ability is just so useful. Anyway, in some good news, Cheeser makes it to major level. We have Savior, which makes healing abilities restore an extra 4 HP. Cool Under Pressure, which I believe is the same as Vanilla, except in the Vanilla game it's a GTS upgrade, whereas here it's an individual soldier ability. And then finally we have Failsafe, which makes the user ignore any negative effects from a failed hack, which is honestly how hacking should just work from the get-go. Anyway, all of these seem like pretty good abilities. The Warlock appears on the next mission. His strengths are Shogun, Brutal, and Soul Stealer. His weakness is Bewildered. Now he summons in a Lancer, and Drifter once again goes for the Skull Mine. Now this time he thankfully lands the attack, but of course the 58% hack chance is too much for him, so we do take some feedback damage. Have I mentioned I don't like hacking? Now as for the Warlock himself, he's taken cover next to an explosive object, so a plasma grenade absolutely annihilates him. And it was honestly a pretty easy encounter for our first standoff with Lord Skullet. Let's hope they all go this well. And then on our next mission, the Hunter makes his debut. We have the Resistance Order to instantly make contact with new regions, so we're expanding out pretty quickly. Hence why we've met 2 Chosen, one after the other. Now his strengths are General, All-Seeing, and Regeneration. His weakness is Shell-Shocked. Now the Lost are on this one, but were fortunately able to hold up in a 2nd-story building. That means they can't really do too much to us. And this is really good for us, because it means using grenades not only does big damage on the Hunter because of his weakness, but it also brings in more Lost. And those Lost don't have an easy way of reaching us, so we're more or less safe from them. Meanwhile, the more of them that come in, well, the more they give the bad guys a nice juicy target to focus on other than us. And this strategy goes really well, and we take down the Hunter just as easily as the Warlock. The Chosen really need to step up their game here if they want to stop us. Now the trade-off to summoning all these lost is that once Advent are gone, that means we have to clean them all up. So the mission takes absolutely forever, but it was a pretty safe victory, and I'm not going to complain about that. And one thing I'll mention here on the next council mission is that we're now able to run multiple soldiers with airdrop. And while that initially may not seem like that big of a deal since we don't have any grenades, it's actually a pretty useful ability to have. Each airdrop user effectively gives us 2 extra plasma grenades for the mission. So this frees up our regular utility slots to bring more specialized items that we would otherwise not be able to. And given our troops don't have a lot of damage output, having extra items can be pretty useful. Like here, when we have a heavy mech to deal with, using an EMP bomb is our best bet. And with other classes, I likely wouldn't have brought the EMP since I'd rather save the utility slot for a more well-rounded item in the plasma grenade. Not to mention having troops who can make great use of medikits, so we want to use utility slots for those as well. And being able to heal is really nice. It makes taking damage a lot less of a problem than it is in other runs, provided it's not a one-shot, of course. Now Drifter hacks the door to free the VIP. I go for the 100% success hack since I know our boy isn't going to be able to make the higher tier reward. That's only a 66% chance. And sure enough, you can see here he rolls another absolutely terrible hack. After that, we hack a nearby tower, and yet again the hack roll is atrocious. It seems our boy Drifter is as bad at being a specialist as he is a sharpshooter. This is uncanny. Anyway, speaking of Drifter, Twitch chat and I were discussing that this is the longest he's lived in one of these runs recently. This man has been having some bad times in most of the campaigns that we've done lately. Longest that Drifty Boy's lived on a run in a while? Yeah, it is. It's kind of good having him around, although he's been as useless as you would expect him to. Now, of course, I should have known better. Having this conversation was a terrible mistake.
Got a casualty here! Got some goods here. No!
Yeah, some free advice from someone who's been around the block. When you're playing this game, never, ever tempt fate. It will not end well. Now, part of me was annoyed since I had been trying to buff Drifter's hacking stat. I think I'd sent him on a few covert ops for this purpose, but another part of me felt only apathy. Drifter's hack rolls this entire campaign have been terrible, so maybe it's a good thing we designate someone else as the squad hacker. Surely they can't do any worse. There I go tempting fate again. Not smart. Now we are able to carry Drifter's body back to the Sky Ranger, which is really good, and we're even able to avenge him by taking out the Archon that landed the one-shot crit. It does come down to the wire though. We're shooting at the Archon from the evac zone on the final turn of the mission before the timer expires. We're cutting it about as close as you can get. But it doesn't matter, we win the mission and the rest of the team makes it out alive. So overall, a pretty horrible outcome, but I guess it could have been worse, so at least that's a positive. Then the next mission also goes pretty badly. It gets to the point where I end up leaving Sally inside the psionic rift portal that the Codex has dropped on us, and she's gonna take all the damage that it inflicts. It's more important that she reload and eliminate one of the bad guys because we are just getting swarmed. So she's just got to have to tank that hit. And the main problem that we're running into is our damage output. The enemies are spawning with more and more HP, but our attacks are still doing the same amount of damage. And that's not a good combination for us. It actually leads to the field commander hitting Jojo with a one-shot crit. We just could not take this guy down quickly enough. And man, people are dropping left and right. Our body count is growing so fast, it may soon rival that of Logan Paul's wife. Keyring has inherited the Skulljack from Drifter. Now he's thankfully able to connect with it on the field commander for some payback, and I have to say, one-shotting an 18 HP organic enemy is pretty sweet. And it's one of the few methods that we have for actually dealing high amounts of damage. Now of course, like his predecessor, Keyring fails the hack roll and he takes the feedback damage. Drifter would be proud. So we do win the mission, but you can see the damage here. 1 soldier gone and 3 others injured. Advent is beginning to outpace us on the tactical layer, and that's a real problem. So what are we going to do about it? Well, for starters, as we deploy on the Psionic Gate mission, we have both powered armor and plasma rifles. So not only can we deal more damage, we can also withstand more damage. So hopefully that's going to help protect us from those one-shot crits. In addition, I'm also investing in whatever decent hidden abilities that we can get our hands on. No one else has rolled Death from Above yet, so that really sucks. But Taylor does have both Shred and Rapid Fire. So I've buffed his aim as much as I can. He could end up being really powerful. And I've also buffed Cheese's aim to exploit his 2 Overwatch shots. It might not sound amazing, but it comes in clutch here when a Trooper and Andromedon Rex survive our attack. If Cheeser were to fire normally at one of these enemies, obviously the other one would survive. But with Overwatching, he can actually eliminate both of them. So it definitely has its advantages. Now, doing anything other than alpha striking, it really goes against my DNA when I'm playing XCOM 2, but I am making an effort to do that here and to break those habits, so hopefully it pays off. Now, my plan to deal with the chrysalids is to use Aid Protocol on Abomination, then set up our 3 Overwatchers, Cheeser, Sally, and Dreadnought. They can all fire twice, so that's 6 shots between them if there's multiple enemies, and we're just hoping that they can murk any chrysalids that jump Abomination before the lids can do any damage. Now, if our Overwatchers do happen to fail, which, let's be honest, there's probably a fair chance of that, we hope the defense boost keeps our hipster friend here safe. And if that fails, we do have plenty of med kits to heal our boy, so as long as he can survive the chrysalids turn, we can get him back to full health. But my plan doesn't go to, well, plan at all. The chrysalids just don't activate until we reach the Psionic Gate, and then all of a sudden about 1 million of them jump us all at once, with the Gatekeeper on top. Definitely not an ideal situation. Now Taylor proves his worth and inflicts huge damage on the egg with rapid fire. That combo of Shred and Blue Screen is just amazing, and it allows Abomination to finish the job with the Boltcaster. We then burn through both Mimic Beacons to keep the Chrysalid army at bay. Now the idea of using these things is not just to keep the Chrysalids from attacking our troops, it's also to force the monsters to cluster together. Once they're in position, Dreadnought can use his exosuit rocket to inflict good damage and soften them up. And see, a scenario like this is ideal for Death from Above. A whole bunch of low HP enemies ripe for the picking, but sadly we don't have access to it. So instead we just take down as many lids as we can, and once again we're relying on Cheeser and Sally to connect with multiple Overwatchers to finish off the remaining enemies. The dynamic duo come through for us, and all the bugs are history before they can land a hand on our troops. Or a pincer on our troops, I guess. Anyway, the Hunter is also here on this one. Normally I save these story missions until after we've eliminated the respective chosen, but just like the Blacksite, we're being forced to deploy here in order to keep the Avatar project under control. Now I have bonded Taylor and Coffee, so we can use a bonded action for a nice flanking shot on the Hunter. And bonds are another method we can use to try and counter our low damage output. They can give us multiple attacks, we can inflict some more damage. Now this is interesting / really annoying. When the Hunter uses his grappling hook, our Overwatch shots don't activate. And I was not happy about this on stream. When we've used a grappling hook in the past, Advent still fired at us. It actually happened very recently in the Shinobi's Only run. And I know what you're thinking. But no, he does not have the ability to ignore Overwatch. So I'm not sure why we didn't get to shoot at him. According to the wiki, it's dependent on line of sight of the tile the grappling unit lands on, so maybe that has something to do with it. I'm not entirely sure. But honestly, it's not a big deal since the hunter grappled right into a position with zero cover. A very big-brained play indeed. So we're able to smoke him pretty easily. We survive the fight, we take him out. I just figured I'd mention the jank that we had to deal with here. And then the next part of the mission really sucks as well. It takes ages to find the remaining 2 chrysalids on the map. And they were just wandering around randomly, not even trying to engage us. Like just hanging out on the very edge of the map. Finding and eliminating them wasn't difficult, it was just time consuming and extremely obnoxious. But anyway, a win's a win, let's move on. For the next Retaliation mission, the usual problem occurs where our top soldiers are tired, so we're gonna have to send some lower level troops. To help us out with this, we have obtained the Continental bonus that makes any recruits trained in the GTS jump straight to Sergeant rank. So we've been training some new guys up to refill our roster. First, we have Sir Dagger, who debuts on the scene by missing an 83% shot. I'm so glad to have this man aboard. After that, we've got Anakin, who misses a 92% shot. Even worse than the last guy. Just amazing. Thirdly and finally, we have Nightmare. Now she actually rolled Guardian as a hidden ability early on. That's the one that gives any Overwatch shot that lands a 50% chance to proc another shot. Now we saw that combining this perk with other Overwatch abilities was pretty lethal in the Long War 2 Rangers video. So I'm hoping history can repeat itself here, and I'm gearing Nightmare out in the Overwatch skills. I've also equipped her with a superior scope to make those Overwatches hit. And if she does turn out to be useless, we can just give her rifle to someone else, so using up the scope isn't a big deal. In addition to the new recruits, Bond has rolled Serial as a hidden ability, so I've slapped a superior scope on him as well, as I think he's the only guy we have with the ability to chain multiple eliminations in the one turn, excluding during Overwatch of course. Now the mission certainly isn't easy, but we do pull off a flawless win. And given we had 3 sergeants in their very first outing, that's a great outcome. So for now at least, we are keeping pace with Advent once again. We've caught up to them. Those research and tech buffs are helping us out. Before long, Cheeser makes it to Colonel level. We have Rescue Protocol, which grants an ally a bonus movement action. Initially I thought this was going to be really good, but there is a catch to it, and I'll get to that a little later. For right now, our second ability is Threat Assessment, which causes Aid Protocol to also give the targeted unit a covering fire Overwatch. Now, unlike the similar perk in the vanilla game, this one doesn't appear to increase the cooldown time for using Aid Protocol, so that's very cool. Finally, we have Full Overdrive, which allows us to permanently control a robotic enemy for the mission, rather than only gaining temporary control. And I should note here that Cheeser has picked up Guardian as a hidden ability as well, and that suits his Overwatch build perfectly. So obviously I'm going to give him that ability straight away. Now the Avatar progress has failed yet again, so we're going to the Forge mission. Now in this run, I have invested in the Skull Mine ability for the bonus to the hacking stat. So we're bringing the Skulljack on pretty much every mission. It gives us at least one easy kill. But on this mission specifically, I've brought it to use on a codex. Now arguably our strongest soldier, Taylor, he wasn't available for this one. So that means no rapid fire and no shred. So potentially that's going to be a problem. Let's see how we go. So we bring in the Avatar, and the first thing I do is Frostbomb it to stop it from teleporting. But the 3 armor points is really reducing the amount of damage we can inflict. And in addition to that, I've only brought 1 soldier with airdrop, so the amount of plasma grenades we have access to is limited. And again, that's really the only way we have to shred. Honestly, this is not an ideal squad composition, but the avatar progress has forced us to deploy, and I've used the best soldiers that we had available. I thought these guys would be able to handle themselves, but it's starting to look like I might have been wrong about that. See here, Abomination, who is the one guy with airdrop, he gets mind controlled on the avatar's turn, so no more grenades for us. Really bad. Now, interestingly, the avatar normally has 3 action points, at least that's what I believe. Now, we have tactical analysis, and we've used the frost bomb. Both of these things should reduce its action points by 1 each, yet it still gets 2 to move and mind control Abomination. So I guess tactical analysis and the frost bomb don't stack. I'm not a fan of that, but at least it's good knowledge to have for the future. Now, between the avatar regaining HP and an unlucky dodge with Cheeser, we're not able to defeat it on the next turn either. And that makes me kinda nervous. Abomination has the Boltcaster, so he could potentially wreck someone with that thing. Fortunately for us, the meme beacon will work on both him and the avatar. In my vanilla specialist only run, I think I said that the beacon doesn't work on the avatar, but that's fake news, it totally does. I think in the original run, the avatar didn't have line of sight on it, and that's why it didn't work. But regardless, the point is, it works here. Now, as if things weren't bad enough, the Warlock calls in some spectral zombies, but they're actually drawn to the beacon as well. I don't think I've seen that happen before. So again, that's good information to have. I mean, it makes sense that the beacon would work on them, I just wasn't aware of that, so I didn't know for sure. So it's our next turn, we're able to land 2 more attacks on the avatar, and they're both dodges. That's 3 dodges in a row now. Then with our next attack, Keyring lands a crit for huge damage. Yeah, when the avatar has almost no HP left anyway, and the crit makes absolutely no difference, that's when we get it. Not beforehand. Goodness me, this fight was so annoying. Now we have enough attacks left to defeat the zombies, especially now that Abomination's back on our side, so we are safe and sound, but this battle took way longer than it needed to. Nonetheless, it's done now, we can finally proceed with the rest of the mission. Now, of course, the Warlock is going to keep spawning zombies on top of us, but our specialists are actually the perfect soldiers to deal with this. I just take it slow and steady, and between Cheeser and Nightmare both having Overwatch builds, the zombies are really no big deal. They just spawn in and we instantly vanquish them. Basically, the zombies are like me when I try to play a PvP shooter. Later on in the mission, we do get into a little bit of trouble with a heavy mech and a trooper. We're crossing the bridge, so we have pretty bad positioning, and it makes it hard to deal with the enemies. Thankfully, Polar actually lands a 30% hit on the trooper, and that inflicts enough damage that a combat protocol will guarantee its demise. But it turns out we don't even end up needing the combat protocol, since Dread Knight lands a 38% hit and he just wipes it out himself. So yeah, our luck has certainly turned around since all those dodges a few minutes ago. Mind you, on the very next turn, Dread Knight misses an 88% shot on the sector pod, so peaks and troughs and all that. But like I said, Abomination has the Boltcaster, and check this out. He does 13 damage even through the armor, so that sector pod isn't going to bother us any further. We do still have the Warlock to deal with. Now, having Revival Protocol makes his Mind Scorch ability a lot less scary. We can easily remove the debuff and keep our troops in the fight. We're able to throw a grenade to destroy the Warlock's cover, and from there it's pretty easy to just blast him into oblivion. So once again, he wasn't much of a problem here. So we grab the body and then we head to the evac zone. Things were looking a bit questionable in the beginning against the Avatar, but after that everything was pretty much smooth sailing. And then this part, I gotta tell you about this part. So here's the post-mission briefing, right? And you can see the Avatar progress has been reduced by 3 for murking the Avatar, and then it's also been reduced by 2 for completing the Forge mission. And look, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a genius or anything like that, but I do think my math skills are definitely above average. And I always thought that 3 plus 2 equals 5. But apparently I'm wrong, because when we return to the Hollow Globe, the avatar progress doesn't reduce by 5, it only reduces by 3. It seems we've been given no credit for completing the Forge mission. And this happened about 1 hour into a 5-hour stream, and I was salty about it for the entire rest of the stream. I mean, to be honest, I'm still salty about it now, and it's been weeks since I played this run. I really dislike these doomsday counters in games like this to begin with, and when they don't even work properly, it just takes a bad idea and makes it even worse. After this, I'm honestly tempted to play with that second wave option that doubles the length of the avatar progress. Then we'd never have to worry about it again, because this is just nonsense. Anyway, I'm getting worked up, I apologise. The moral of the story is do not use the Skulljack on a story mission, because you may get screwed out of avatar reduction points that you rightfully earned. Rant over, let's move on, I'll try to keep my cool. And I think we need some positivity in the run right now, so let's make some progress on finishing things by taking out the assassin. Now the door to the first room is already open, and that always makes things trickier. See, when the door's closed, it's really easy to run right up to it and then end your turn. On your next turn, you can open the door as a free action, and you've got all your troops ready for whatever pod you find on the other side, assuming you find a pod at all. But with the door open, our troops don't have the opportunity to move up and get into a good position. So in this instance, with this pod, I decide we'll make use of tactical analysis and we'll just fall back. This will then force the bad guys to move up on us where we can overwatch them. So any takers on how this one's gonna go? Yeah, of course, our troops miss 5 out of 5 overwatch shots. And these are our best soldiers too, so their aim should be pretty high. And this is where I discover the problem with Rescue Protocol. The ability doesn't work as I anticipated. It seems you can only use it on a soldier who has already used up all of their action points. Now, from the description of the ability, I thought it would basically be like being able to give any soldier you want run and gun. But apparently no. Apparently that would be too useful. Instead we get this, which sucks way more than how I thought the ability worked. So all we can do is use it to move after our turn. So it's kind of like giving the soldier a use of Implacable, I guess. What would you rather, run and gun or Implacable? Exactly. So anyway, long story short, I'm probably not going to be using this ability very much, and in the meantime, we need to use a Mimic Beacon on the very first pod. Now, definitely not a great start, but at least everyone's alive, at least so far. And at this point, like I said, I was still salty about the avatar progress, so I just run past everything and head straight into the final area. I'm kind of over it at this stage. Now, scanning protocol makes it easy to locate the assassin, but she is behind indestructible full cover. And we want to be careful about the shots that we take, since if we miss, she can fire back at us. So I try to take her down with Overwatch fire, but our main Overwatcher Cheezer is kind of letting us down. As in, the assassin only has 5 HP left, and she's right in front of Cheezer, but he just completely misses. And this leads to her using a blinding grenade. Now that's not too bad, we can deal with it. Then on the next turn, I try the same thing again, and you guessed it, Cheezer misses again, and this time it leads to him getting shot in the face. So this isn't working, I then decide we'll just wipe her out the usual way. And it's weird, Cheezer has been really useful this run, he normally always comes through for us. I guess he was just having an off day on this mission, because he's not coming through for us this time. Now, for the sarcophagus, and I've been looking forward to this. In the last video, I asked you guys for ideas on what we can call this thing, and I got quite a few responses, so thank you to everyone who shared their ideas. I'm gonna just work my way through using all of the suggestions you guys have made, and we'll just completely confuse the heck out of new viewers having no idea what we're talking about. What could possibly go wrong, right? So we use the usual strat of focusing fire on the stasis chamber while using our second Mimic Beacon to distract the reinforcements. And that leads to the assassin returning with 50% HP. Now, her low profile ability is a bit annoying, but by now we have tier 3 gremlins, so our combat protocol does 6 damage. And the great thing about this ability is that it's guaranteed to hit. Low profile isn't going to help the assassin avoid our gremlins. So this mission was a bit annoying, but we persevered, we pulled through. And our reward for doing so is our first Brigadier. We have Restoration, Kill Zone, and Capacitor Discharge. And I believe all 3 of these abilities work the same way they do in vanilla. And they are all good abilities to have for sure, but the bigger story here is once again the hidden skill that Cheezer now has access to. Death from Above. He's the first one to get it since Kelly. So let's hope he can get back to being on top form and we can make some good use of this. On the next Guerrilla Op, I did perform a reload. Of the game, I mean. Dread Knight gets grabbed by Viper, but Sally overwatches the Snake in the process. Now this causes some weird placement glitch where the game is confused about what tile Dread Knight is occupying. Now there is a heavy mech lurking about that went on Overwatch, and the game is telling me Dread Knight is outside of its visual range, but when I click to move, that's not the case and he takes a bunch of damage. Now that in of itself isn't a game changer, but on the enemy turn, a Gatekeeper uses its AoE attack and the combined damage sends Dread Knight to the Shadow Realm. So I did reload because I would have played the turn differently if I had known that Dread Knight was at risk of getting overwatched. And the reload does actually fix the glitch, placing Dread Knight in the right position. So we replay the mission, we end up winning without any losses, and honestly, outside of this, it wasn't a very eventful outing, but I figured I should mention it. Now the next mission, it's pretty annoying too. See, because the game robbed us of that avatar reduction, it forces me to deploy on a facility mission. I normally like to avoid these things if I can, but here we don't have a choice. Things start off reasonably badly when Bond yellow dashes right into a turret, plus a pod of a trooper and a Spectre. And there's the Viper King himself. Now as you might expect, Bond gets grabbed by the King pretty quickly, and of course getting grabbed actually causes him to activate another pod, this one with a heavy mech. So Bond is having a real bad time here. But it's potentially not as bad as you might think. Now for one, the Viper King is the least dangerous of the 3 rulers, so I'm glad that he's the one we're facing off against. Secondly, Bond quickly gets knocked out by the Frosty Man. And yeah, that's actually a good thing in this scenario. Being knocked out is a lot better than being sent to the Shadow Realm. And since we have Revival Protocol, when the area is a bit safer, we can wake Bond up and bring him back into the fight. Until that time, no enemies are going to target him while he's KO'd, so he should survive and he should be okay. I go for a risky 63% hack to control the turret. I know I must be insane for even attempting this, but we actually get the hack. And I think that's the first enemy I've taken control of for the entire run. And the only reason I even attempted it is because we are super desperate here. There's too many enemies and this will buy us some time. Basically, I'm hoping the turret can act as a mimic beacon, and the enemies can target it instead of our soldiers. Of course, it can also attack Advent too, so it's like a mimic beacon with guns. And the other really cool thing we have going in our favour is that our combat protocol now does 10 to 11 damage to a heavy mech, and it bypasses their armour. So that means 2 of these things are guaranteed to take one of those chunky boys down. And I'm not even done with the good news yet. The Viper King advances on our position, but he does so by dropping off this little cliff face to the area below. Now this breaks his line of sight, and that effectively takes the King out of the fight. That rhymed, I did not intend it to. But see, without line of sight, he's not going to get any reaction turns. So that means we have all the time in the world to take down the regular enemies, and the Snack Boy, he's just going to sit there waiting for us. And we can fight him when we're ready, i.e. when we've destroyed all the other enemies and it's just us versus him. So the fight does start to turn in our favour, and pretty soon we're able to revive Bond. Then we can use Overwatch to force the enemies to move up to us, where we can inflict good damage on them. Now once the lesser enemies are taken care of, we then begin to cheese the heck out of the Viper King. We use up all of our airdrops to get as many plasma grenades as possible, and we throw the grenades at the king from beyond his line of sight, and again this denies him any reaction turns. Now the plan is working really well, but eventually of course we're going to run out of plasma grenades. So what do we do then? Well, we use a frost grenade and we freeze him. Then we can use the power of Taylor's rapid fire to inflict some mega damage. Now the king does try to flee, but I've set everyone on the ridge up with Overwatch, so we gun him down before he can escape. So this exchange went so well. Honestly, the way that it started, I thought we were in so much trouble. And as much as it pains me to say, hacking did save our backsides just then, so I'll admit that. Now, of course, even though we won that exchange, it did take a long time, and because of the large time frame, I kind of just assumed all the bad guys, minus the one turret that we've shut down, must be gone. It feels like we've been playing this mission forever, and we've slaughtered legions of enemies. But the reality is that there's actually still one other pod out there, and it consists of no less than one Gatekeeper and 3 Archons. So this was a massive mistake on my part. I got cocky and we moved up way too far, way too fast. And it actually leads to us losing Roble to a melee attack from an Archon. Now fortunately we don't lose anyone else, but I was a bit annoyed by this. The only reason we were on this stupid mission is because of the avatar progress jank, and now it's cost us one of our soldiers. Man, I was salty. But there's nothing we can do. We've destroyed the facility, set the avatar progress back, the campaign is still alive, all we can do is push forward. And immediately after this one, we actually have a council mission. The problem is the roster is way too depleted. We've been doing too many missions. So on this one, I'm going to use the Hoffman strat from the Shinobi's run. We send 2 of the lowest level troops we have, and we're hoping that they'll somehow be able to murk the Dark VIP before they get wasted. So that's the plan. Allow me to show you the reality on the very first turn of the mission.
Stepping off. We're busted.
And needless to say, the Hoffman strat goes about as well as it did last time. Sir Dagger eats a one-shot crit, and Avian gets poisoned. The Dark event that gives Advent Viper rounds is active, that's how it happened. Now given the poison damage is going to gobble up her HP, even if we avoid every single attack for the rest of the mission, she's still going down most likely. So I figure this one's a lost cause. And I decide we're going to take down the civilian who ratted on us with Avian's final act. Yeah, her last moments on this earth are going to be spent on absolute pettiness. That's how this commander operates. And the really funny thing is, watching the footage back, I think we actually threw the grenade at the wrong civilian. But whatever. Collaborators are collaborators. They get no mercy from us. So yeah, that one didn't go too well, and it means that we've lost the region. And without it, we actually no longer have access to tactical analysis, and that sucks. So we want to make contact again ASAP, which we can do pretty easily since we have the bonus to contact regions immediately. The problem is we also have to build another radio tower there. That's going to take time and be really expensive. Definitely a setback here, but I'm confident we can overcome it. Not too long after this, we're going to go and hit the Warlock in his home. Now, we've had a UFO supply raid mission just before this, so we're rocking some new upgrades which are going to make our lives much easier. Coffee has a superior stock and AP rounds, so even if he misses a shot, he's still going to do decent damage. Bond has Talon rounds and the Assassin's shotgun to maximise crit damage. Cheeser has the Viper King suit as the grappling hook combos well with Death from Above. We've also got 2 war suits with blaster launchers. Now, this has been possible since we have the resistance orders and continental bonuses that make almost everything in the Proving Grounds complete instantly. And I've been saving almost all of our Elerium cores for when we had these abilities. And as if all our new toys weren't enough, we can attach 3 weapon mods to our rifles, and we have the continental bonus that further improves all our weapon mods. So as you can probably guess, with all these upgrades, the team is going to be a fair bit stronger than what we have been. And this might finally be enough to tip the power balance in our favour. Let's see how it goes. But here's the thing, no matter how many power increases you have, the jank is still going to get you, and it gets us on the first pod. The doors to the next room look like they're closed, but apparently at least one of them is not. And the pod sees us through the door and activates. Now, I know pods can see through doors, but that usually only happens once the door has been opened. Here, the door is see-through right from the get-go. Very annoying. 2 Spectres survive our onslaught, but Abomination actually stuns one of them with the Boltcaster, so only one of them's going to be able to do anything to us. So we end up taking 0 damage even without using a meme beacon. And the implications of this are actually pretty interesting. It's looking like our squad has become so powerful that we can even overcome the most dangerous enemy of all, the jank. So yeah, this is a good sign. I'm feeling confident. Now in the elevator room, we repeat the process of running past all the bad guys, and now let's go hit Lord Skullet. Now he has picked up kinetic plating, so just like the assassin, we want to be careful about missing shots. Now the Warlock does survive for 1 turn, and he brings in some stun lances, but we can utilise Death from Above to obliterate all of them and still take the Talkie Boy down on our next turn. Fairly easily, in fact. Then once again we target the fridge and we use the meme beacon to keep the bad guys off our back. A tried and true strategy on this channel. And as is normally the case, the Warlock returns with 50% health, and is also sometimes the case, he takes up full indestructible cover. Now despite this, we can still do pretty decent damage to him. Cheeser can get the flank with the grappling hook, and then we can use a blaster launcher as well as combat protocol. So we're hitting him with a lot, but we're not able to take him down completely. This causes him to go into stasis, and he summons 4 Spectral Lancers. Now because the fight is taking so long, we're having to eliminate the non-chosen enemies, otherwise they're going to get to attack us. And all of this leads to 2 of the Spectral Lancers surviving, but as long as they don't target the same person, we should be fine. Now Taylor does take big damage and he gets dazed, but he's still alive, so that's okay. And then it's our turn again, we're able to eliminate both the Ghost Boys, but the Warlock survives for another turn. He's proving a lot more tenacious than the Assassin. Now as much as I would like to blame my bragging before, the truth is it's that indestructible cover. If he wasn't behind that, we would have smoked him on the first turn he came back. Again, because of the kinetic plating, we're just having to be really careful with our attacks, and it is holding us back a bit. So finally, it looks like we're going to be able to take him out, and I have the chance to do it with Cheeser. The thing is, Cheeser's already max level, so he doesn't need the XP. Instead, we take the 76% shot with Polar, and sure enough, she connects and wins us the mission. She is a real quiet achiever, I have to say. Next up we have a Guerrilla Op, and I attempt to use full override on a turret. Now the chance to succeed the hack is 86%, and we get pretty much as close as you can while still failing. Seriously, why did the devs make hacking suck so much? So I also attempt to hack the turret with another soldier, but the option to do so is grayed out. So apparently, if you fail a full override, that completely removes the ability to hack this enemy. So I didn't know that. Things just keep getting better and better for us here. So anyway, we may not be able to hack the stupid thing, but we can rapid fire it into oblivion, and I should have just done that from the start. Alright, let's move on from that mission and let's go hit the Hunter's base. Now we activate 2 pods at once, right away, So that's not ideal. Now Sally has picked up Chain Shot as a hidden ability, so she can make quick work of the Berserker, and that's really good. But then I make a really bad misplay. We've got 2 Spectres and a Codex to deal with. Now I could opt for a Mimic Beacon, but I decide not to. The Codex should go for a Psionic Bomb and destroy itself from the feedback damage. One of the Spectres should make a clone, leaving only the second Spectre to actually inflict any damage on us. Now 1 attack we can easily survive and heal, it shouldn't be a problem. The mistake that I've made is forgetting about tactical analysis. I had just returned to the stream after dealing with an exploding milk carton in my kitchen, so I definitely wasn't as focused as I normally would be, and I wasn't playing at my best. And the problem with tactical analysis is that it prevents the Spectres from using their clone ability, so that means both of them are just going to shoot at us. Now 1 hit we can tank easily enough, but 2, if it's on the same soldier, that's potentially a different story. And I was super afraid of losing Bond after the first hit, but for whatever reason, the second Spectre just does nothing. So not sure what that's about, but we're okay, and I definitely should have just used a Mimic Beacon. That would have been the much more sensible thing to do, and it would have been a lot better for my blood pressure too. So in the elevator room, you know the drill by now, we run past all the bad guys and we make it straight to the elevator. We did it for the other 2 Chosen base assaults, we might as well keep the trend going here. Now the Hunter has picked up the Planewalker ability, so we use the Frost Bomb to shut that down. After that it's time for a Blaster Launcher, both to shred his armor and exploit his weakness to explosives. And while Planewalker is usually annoying, Abomination has also picked up a new trick. He scored Holo Targeting as a hidden skill. So this means when we attack with this guy, we can also give the other soldiers an aim buff. Now for this reason, I've replaced his Boltcaster with a regular rifle and a hair trigger. My thinking is if the hair trigger procs, he can holo target multiple enemies in a turn, and that could be useful, I don't know. But spoiler alert, I don't think the hair trigger procced a single time the entire campaign. Now hair triggers can be great, but most of the time they're pretty garbage, and that's why I don't use them very often. Anyway, I go on Overwatch in a half-hearted attempt to take the Hunter down on his turn. I think he still has too much HP, so I'm not expecting it to work, but Cheezer proves me wrong and he lands a huge 13 damage crit and smokes the Hunter. So it's good to see Cheezer is back on form for this Chosen space. And the really good thing, and I've said this in previous videos, but when we take out the Chosen on their turn, it gives us our entire next turn free of reinforcements to hit the monolith. Because of this, we're able to blow it up in a single turn, and that means the Hunter comes back with a measly 25% HP. Now, since Cheezer has the Viper King suit, he can actually freeze the Hunter to stop his teleporting on this turn as well. So again, that's going to shut down that Planewalker, and that's going to be really helpful. Plus, we still have our second Blaster Launcher. And so as you can probably guess, it is an absolute beatdown here. This guy wasn't able to do anything to us. He just appeared and immediately disappeared. Also like me in a PvP shooter. And now with the Hunter gone, there's really nothing left to do other than finish this run. So how about we go and do that? By this stage we have 9 Brigadiers, and that's enough for a full team on the network tower and the final mission. For the tower, we're bringing Dreadnought, Bond and Nightmare. Now, it's not that these soldiers are bad, it's just that they don't have any super useful abilities like Death from Above or Shred. The best we have with Bond is Serial, and as we've established in the previous couple of Long War II class videos, this version of Serial actually drops off in damage with each attack, and it kinda sucks, a little bit. And because of this, I just had a bit of a bad feeling as the mission started. Now, the first pod is a Muton and Andromedon, and I learn here that airdrop doesn't break concealment, so that is really cool. It allows us to activate the pod with a plasma grenade from Dreadnought, that helps us with the shredding, and then Nightmare can capitalise with her 2 Overwatch shots. So even though this plan goes very well, it's still too much HP for us to deal with, so we have to throw down a meme beacon. The bad part is that before we've finished with the first Andromedon, a second one with an Archon arrives. So if you include the second form of the Andromedons, we have 5 enemies to deal with here. Now with only 3 soldiers on our side, that's looking tough, and we don't have anyone with rapid fire or chain shot to help us out. And even with Serial, we can only take down 1 Andromedon, so we need to use the second Mimic Beacon. That means we have no more left for this mission. My plan for the next turn is to get the Andromedon down to second form, which we're able to do thanks to a bonded action, and then I want to Overwatch with Dreadnought and Nightmare. Between them, they'll get to make at least 4 attacks this way. Now I want the Archon to use Blazing Pinions, that way we won't take any damage this turn, but I actually learned something here. See, what I didn't realise is that if the Flying Monstrosity becomes frenzied during its turn, it can actually change the action that it was going to take. So initially, it is going to use Pinions, but after we hit it with Overwatch, it decides to just shoot at Dreadnought instead. Now we get lucky and the Andromedon punches Nightmare, and the reason that's lucky is because if both enemy units had targeted the same soldier, we may have lost someone here. So this was a really good learning experience. I would have been better off just taking down the Andromedon completely instead of Overwatching and just letting the Archon do its thing. Anyway, on the next turn, we finally vanquish all the bad guys. And even though none of these guys are skilled in the medical tree, I have given a couple of them the restoration ability using our AP. So this allows Dreadnought to heal both himself and Nightmare without even needing a medikit. And I'm hoping that's going to keep us alive in the very likely event that we take further hits from other enemies. But we actually don't. Yeah, a bit of a twist there. Now there is a pod of an Archon and a Spectre to deal with, but we eliminate them surprisingly easily. And the last pod, which does have another Andromedon, I just run past and hack the objective for the win. So this definitely wasn't an easy mission, and it could have gone sideways really easily, but we have pulled it off, we are victorious, and now there's only one thing left to do. I'm expecting the final mission to be much easier though, truth be told. I have saved our best troops and gear for this outing. Now a really cool thing is that at Brigadier rank, Polar picked up Phantom as a hidden ability, so she's going to be concealed and can serve as our scout. And given how deadly we are at overwatching, this is going to be an insane combo. Polar can find the pods and then we can set the other soldiers up in the perfect position just out of line of sight in order to get the bad guys to stumble into us and activate our Overwatch ambush. And I gotta say, this proves to be quite the effective strategy. Now of course we do get some jank when the sector pod activates and its movement animation seems to bug out, causing it to move way further than it should. Now I don't think it's actually occupying the area it seems to be, it's just a visual bug. And I've seen this plenty of times with Advent soldiers, but never with a sector pod, and it was pretty goofy, I gotta be honest. And yeah, you can see here, when we do destroy it, the explosion is over by Polar, and nowhere near where the sector pod was apparently standing. So yeah, just jank, but didn't actually affect how we dealt with the pod. Now unfortunately, my scouting plan soon goes down the toilet as Polar moves into a pod that was just out of line of sight. It was around a corner, so it spots her and our concealment is gone. And this leads to 2 pods being active, including 2 Berserkers and 2 Andromedons. And just like the network tower, that is a huge amount of HP for us to deal with. Now in retrospect, I really should have given her scanning protocol as well, then she would have been the ultimate scout, but you know, hindsight is 20/20 and all that. And I gotta say here, as much as I complained about rescue protocol earlier, it does come in really helpful here. It allows Polar to fall back to the rest of the squad with a 3rd movement action, and hopefully that's going to keep her safe. My basic plan is to use tactical analysis and force the bad guys to move towards us instead of attacking, at which point we can overwatch them into paste. But the plan kinda backfires. Our team is actually too far away. So the enemies do move forward, but they don't move far enough forward to reach our Overwatch fire. So we don't actually get to take any shots at them. Yeah, bit of an epic fail on my part with this one. And honestly, this is a bad scenario to be in. Tactical analysis is only going to help us on the first turn the enemies activate, not any subsequent turns. And I'm not sure the distance Andromedons can launch their acid bomb. It's quite possible even if they cannot get line of sight on us, they can still hit us with that attack. Now that's not something I want to risk, so we need to deal with those big robots ASAP. I guess they're not really robots, are they? But you know what I mean. And honestly, at this stage, I am a little bit panicked. And in my panic, I decide to try to hack one of the Andromedon husks. Taking control of it will effectively give us a free meme beacon. Now it's a 78% chance of success, and do I even need to say anything? Of course it fails. Seriously, hacking is pure garbage. Like there's not even any jokes I can make about it at this stage. The game has run the joke into the ground. We've failed almost every hack we've tried. This is just absurd. Now, because of this, we end up burning through a blaster launcher to help Cheeser get some eliminations with death from above. I really wanted to save both blaster launchers for the final chamber, as they can be a really useful tool in negating the avatar's teleporting, but sadly it's not to be. Hopefully we can at least hold on to the second one. But yeah, even with the blaster launcher, it's not enough, and I end up throwing down a mimic beacon. But honestly, even with that, I'm not holding my breath. There are so many enemies still alive, and I don't think the beacon is going to survive long enough to distract all of them. So we could be in for a pretty punishing turn here. Alternatively, we could not be. And this is one occasion where I am very happy to be wrong. The first Muton that attacks misses its shot, which isn't even supposed to happen, but somehow it does. Finally, the jank is working in our favour. It's about time. Then the other Muton just sprints towards us, it doesn't even attack at all. And through all of this nonsense, we end up taking 0 damage. Now we had absolutely no right to get out of that turn untouched. The game was being very generous here. Now, in order to avoid Cheeser coming under fire last turn, I did move him off the elevated platform that he was occupying. The problem with that is now he has no access to death from above since his grapple is on cooldown. And death from above really is our secret weapon. Without it, the remaining Andromedon wreck is able to survive. Now it does punch Abomination, but it's not too big of a problem. We can easily survive that attack and heal our boy back to full health. And of course we can destroy the Andromedon while we're there. So definitely a tough encounter here, and I'm really not happy about burning through some of our consumables. But at the end of the day, everyone is still breathing, we've still got all our troops at our disposal, and that's the most important thing. Now that we don't have concealment, we're moving forward a lot more slowly, and I'm just overwatching as we go. Now after a while, we encounter the pod with 2 gatekeepers, and there's honestly a bit to unpack here. The first thing is that Cheese's repeater procs and he one-shots a gatekeeper with Overwatch. So that's just amazing. We love to see that. But the second thing is that the remaining gatekeeper gets to shoot at us upon being revealed. And I have no idea why this happened. Now it thankfully missed, so it's no big deal, but it should not be able to shoot at us. Now there is a mechanic that enemies can shoot at you instead of scampering when you reveal them, but that's only supposed to happen when the pod has broken your concealment. So honestly, this seems like yet even more jank to me. So if anyone knows why this thing got to attack us, let me know your ideas in the comment section. I got nothing here. Anyway, despite the nonsense, we still eliminate all the remaining enemies, so it's off to the final chamber. Let's wrap this one up. And this is why I wanted to keep concealment or both the blaster launchers. It would have allowed us to get the drop on the first avatar pod before they scatter. Sadly, not to be here. I do not want to use our final blaster launcher at this stage. We may end up needing it later in a clutch. And so this leads to the avatar moving to a pretty horrible position for us. So instead I opt to eliminate the Archons, and unfortunately the avatar is going to survive this turn. And does that make 2 videos in a row the first avatar has survived our attack? When it rains it pours, I guess. So 3 mutons come in as reinforcements, and Cheeser instantly downs 2 of them with Overwatch while leaving the 3rd on minimal HP. And I'm glad this happened, not just because I like seeing the mutons go down, but it kinda gave me a bit of information about how Sentinel and Guardian interact. From what I can tell, and I could be wrong, it seems like Sentinel will guarantee 2 shots from Overwatch, but they must be on 2 different enemies. Now, only after both of those shots have been taken will the 50% chance for Guardian to activate kick in. So it seems if you don't have at least 2 enemies to trigger Sentinel, then Guardian doesn't seem to ever proc. And it's honestly not ideal. Like, you want Guardian to be activating all the time, but I guess it's still a lot better than nothing, so we'll go with it. Now, as for the avatar, he mind controls Polar, and then a bunch of faceless enter the fray. And the problem here is the side of the room where all this is happening, it doesn't have a great deal of firepower. And really what I mean by that is they don't have anyone with death from above. That ability is just such a game changer. Now, because of this, I see no way to deal with the faceless, so I opt to just focus on the avatar. Chain Shot brings it down to a pittance of HP, at which point it teleports right in front of Cheeser and Taylor, our 2 strongest soldiers. So needless to say, the avatar is gone and Polar is back on our side. And despite being on the other side of the map, Cheeser, Taylor and Coffee can still assist in dealing with the faceless. Combat Protocol acts on squad sight, and I gave it to every soldier before this mission. I just figured having an attack that is guaranteed to hit, that's going to be really helpful, so we might as well take it on everyone we can. So the boys send their squad of gremlins flying across the area to help out their teammates on the other side of the map. And that's another thing I love about this game, those Gondor calls for aid moments where you're able to help out in a really bizarre way. It's really cool. Now, they're only able to take 1 of the faceless down, but I'm honestly happy with that. 2 faceless is a lot better for us to deal with than 3. Now, Polar gives a rescue protocol to Abomination and then falls back herself. My plan is to just try and move far enough away from the faceless that they will not be able to reach us. They only have melee attacks, so if they're too far away, they're pretty much useless. But something super interesting happens here. The faceless are actually affected by tactical analysis. Now, I have no idea why this is happening. It was clearly still the enemy's turn when they spawned in, and tactical analysis is only supposed to affect units we activate on our turn. So once again, it seems the jank has returned to our side and is helping us out. This is a really bizarre run. Anyway, the second avatar has appeared on Taylor's side of the room, and we begin with a capacitor discharge. Now, arguably, shredding would have been a better idea, but the discharge will also hit the nearby mutons, allowing Cheeser to mop them up. So then the avatar teleports to the middle of the room, where Abomination hits it. This causes it to keep teleporting to the furthest corner of the room on Polar's side. Now, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to get line of sight on it, or at least we wouldn't if it weren't for a little trick I have up my sleeve. Our girl Polar, once again, she has just what we need. She scored Run and Gun as a hidden ability. And with this, she's able to get line of sight on the avatar. Not only does she reach it, but her repeater procs and she destroys it instantly. I'm telling ya, Polar is the sleeper hit of this run. She's just always there, lurking in the background, just waiting for when we really need her, and almost every single time she delivers the goods. Now the Faceless are able to reach Sally this turn, but between two of them they inflict a measly 3 damage. So yeah, I think Sally's gonna be fine. I'm not panicking over this one. Now on the other side of the room, we've had to use our final meme beacon to keep some Archons away from us. So not ideal, but hopefully this campaign will be over pretty soon and it's not gonna matter. So then it's our turn again, and we eliminate every enemy on Cheese's side -1. Only a single Archon survives, and we're able to use the Viper King suit to freeze it. So this is looking really good. We are in control here, at least on this side of the room. The other side of the room, however, it's looking like a bit of a disaster. Just Faceless and Archons all over the place, and we simply do not have the means to get rid of them. So I end up just falling back with the troops and using aid protocol, and I'm hoping that's going to keep them safe. And check this out. Sally gets this crazy Overwatch shot where she just snipes this Archon out of the sky. This was a really cool visual. Another reason I love this game. Now Polar does get hit by an Archon's melee attack, but she's thankfully able to tank the damage. She's okay. And now the final avatar has arrived. And this is what we've been saving that final blaster launcher for. It not only shreds the avatar, but it sends it teleporting away from its backup. Polar's able to get a flanked shot, and that sends it teleporting once more over to Cheese's side of the room. From here, Taylor is able to yellow dash into a good position, and then with our final bonded action from Coffee, we can land a 100% chance rapid fire. And that is game over. Another campaign that we've won. Now I said at the start of the video that these guys play a lot like their vanilla counterparts, and I stand by that statement. So the real question is, did I play the run any better this time? And honestly, I think I did. The biggest misplay I made in the vanilla run, at least in my opinion, is that I didn't protect my medics. I'd often place the guys with the medikits on the front line, and then they'd end up getting murked or stunned or something else, and we didn't have anyone else who could heal them. Here, that never really happened. I think I was a lot better with my positioning. And we actually only failed 3 missions the entire run. Now it feels like more than that, but I guess that's just because we had a lot of missions where we took injuries or losses. And another thing is that I think something that did limit these guys was the lack of super helpful hidden abilities. Now don't get me wrong, we did get some good ones, but losing Kelly and not having a second death from above user definitely made the final mission tougher than it would have been otherwise. And there were also plenty of missions where we had no death from above after we lost Kelly, and that was tough as well. But yeah, overall, I can't complain too much. I think these guys are a very solid class. They're not amazing, but they're pretty good. And I had a lot of fun this run, and I hope you did too watching this video. If you did, as usual, please consider all the usual things that help the channel out, liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing to the channel. And remember, I have a Patreon where you can get early access to videos just like this one for only a few bucks a month. The link to that is in the description, so please consider checking it out if you're interested. And I think that's gonna do it from me for today. So I hope you'll join me for the next video, and until that time, have a great day.
I don't know what you want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel